Hello and welcome to Mediva Podcast, a modern audio drama indie voice acting podcast with me, Sarah. Oh, with my notes gone. Oh, I've forgotten my iPad. Oh no, I can't remember what I meant to say. Oh no, I was meant to do this in an accent. Oh, I forgot to write which stresses to put in Mediva. Mad. Oh, I should have marked up my script. Oh well, this episode should help with the wonderful Beth Eyre talking all things getting yourself organised as a voice actor for indie audio fiction. Enjoy! People of the world, I'm very excited to introduce to you probably one of the voices most recognisable in this amazing array and sea of beautiful audio fiction. It's Beth Eyre. Hello, Beth.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to speak to you. You're like a massive inspiration for many, including my good self. And it's so brilliant of you to come on. So thank you for sharing your expertise today. Now, as far as where folks can find you, what are your favourite voice projects you've been involved in? I know that's tough because I'm sure there's a bazillion, but
gosh,
truly enjoyed getting your teeth into.
I've been so lucky because I feel so enthusiastic about everything I've done, really, and probably whatever I'm sort of working on, I'm kind of full of at the time. I suppose all-time favourites were Nova Goats, which is where
it's legendary.
Started out, really, and I love the show enormously. I love my character and I love everyone who's involved, so definitely would Nova Goats. Check that out.
Yes, do. It's a treat, my goodness. It's actually, I hold it up as one of the bastions of audio fiction in its form as it is now. That's what we should all be aiming for. That beautiful scripts, the amazing cast, the gelling, the family nature, and just the way it can move you and make you laugh till you hurt. You know, it's just brilliant. So yes, I agree.
Thank you, Sarah. No, I love the show, and it's brilliant when we've had so much support.
Yes.
I suppose other than that, there's so many things I've loved doing. I absolutely adored working with Buzzsprout8578389 on Change of Mind, and I've recently worked with the company again on Unseen.
Unseen is a treat as well, yes.
Which has been fantastic to record last year in lockdown, so that's lovely.
Yes.
Recently fulfilled an ambition of working with Lauren Shippen on a show called Life with Leo, which is written by the wonderful Octavia Bray and directed by Shani Howard. That's not out yet, but it soon will be.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All of those names are just stellar, and if you don't know who they are, look them all up and follow them and find their works, because honestly, each one of those people is astounding at what they do.
It's a huge amount of talent.
Yes,
terrifying.
No, that's brilliant. And I mean, today really the focus is on getting us voice actors organised. And when I was involved in doing 11th Hour with you, we did one of the amazing Richard Brooks's scripts.
Oh, yes.
And I just saw how fantastically organised you were with, your script was beautifully marked up. And I think just things like that got me to thinking, well, what other things do we need to do? And when I'm teaching the folks on this Quirky Voices voice acting course, I am hugely an advocate of marking up script. And as much as also it's that, it's not confining you. It's your springboard to knowing, the basics of everything that you are in that character, in that scene, in that place at that time. And then you can truly play. So, yeah, I really want to just focus on what you do. So with regards to auditions, let's start there. Where do you find your auditions and what kind of preparation do you do before you do anything?
Lots of different places to find auditions, really. There's quite a fab newsletter from the podcast host, which has a lovely, very convenient roundup of auditions at the end, which is very useful.
The Fiction Podcast News Weekly, run by some very lovely, nice, gentle very
thorough. Seem to manage to find everything that's going on out there. Other than that, Facebook and Facebook groups, Twitter. I suppose after a while, working in audio fiction, following people in audio fiction, you just start to see people posting stuff. There's also Mandy, which used to be called Casting Call Pro or Voices Pro.
Yes.
You can occasionally get auditions on there, sometimes Spotlight. It's a whole world of different ways of finding out what's going on, I suppose. So what do I do before an audition? I don't know if I am that organised, but I think organisation is key. I suppose one of the first things is just try and figure out how much time you've got. How much time you've got to do this audition, and how much time does that mean you have to prepare it, to actually record it, and then to do any sort of editing and sending.
Yes.
I think if at all possible, it's great to get it in a bit early, if you can. I think as actors, one of the challenges we all face is that we are never in control of when opportunities come up, when we're cast and stuff, and when we get auditions, and so it can be quite tricky. You think you've planned out your week, and the truth is you just don't know.
Yes.
When things that are quite important are going to suddenly turn up. So
this is true. Shifting priorities.
This is it, right? So it's kind of about being adaptable to whatever gets thrown at you. So with that in mind, if there's an opportunity for you to get the audition in a bit early, I think that helps, because I think sometimes people look at the early auditions before the deadline, so it can help you getting cast. I think it gives you leeway if something goes wrong.
True.
Or if your time doesn't pan out as much as you can.
Yep.
And then read the script, have a little bit of a think about the character, see if it's an existing project, if you can listen to some of the episodes, get a feel for what the show is like.
Yes, good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I must say I've kind of swung to highly organised ridiculousness in some respects, in as much as because I'm balancing so many different hats with, my teaching life as well as mum and trying to produce and voice act. I found I've entered now more things into Trello. So I have a voice card for just auditions where I put the key information, so I transpose the key things from the audition, wherever it might be, into its own card. So I've got the link to the sides, the link to the name of the person it is, the deadline written down, and basically can also set up a reminder. So say if I haven't done it, I'll set up a reminder to ping me 2 days before it's due, at the very least. So then I've got that at least as a reminder, thinking, oh, okay, yes, I must do this one this evening or whenever I have the time. And so today, for example, there's one called The Ghost Ship, and I'd really like to audition for that. So I've just been prepping by thinking about different voices I can play with. And my pinger went off a couple of days ago. And so, I just feel like having that kind of thing done, and it doesn't take too long to transpose that information. It just means I'm a little bit more prepared for things.
That sounds
than
fantastic.
Doing things on the hoof.
That's like the next level of organisation. So is Trello like a sort of workflow?
Yeah, I mean, it is whatever you would like it to be. Essentially, you can create lots of different cards for different things. So along the row, for example, so I've got the basics things I need to do this week, and then the auditions that I'd like to apply for. Then I've got the card where I have auditioned for things and just put any key details on that. And then beyond that, it's sending in, things for table reads or information about characters I've been cast in, and I've got sort of lists of that, and as well as a card for folks who I've been working with and their emails and basic information. And I think just also putting things on those kind of cards, like any information about the person, like the name of their kids or their dogs, so you can remember and be a friendly, nice, polite person who remembers people's smaller details, if you like, of their lives. So I think essentially it just helps me to organise myself and to know when I sent something and when I'm meant to do something. So and I can highly recommend folks have a little browse on that. There are other things you can use. I think Asana is a good project tool, and there's a few that one you have to pay for, as well as I can't remember if it's Voicecraft, I think is the name. They've just released one specific for voiceover folks, and you have to pay for that. Trello is free, so
great.
That's the allure for me. But I mean, with regards to auditions that you have done, is there any fun times you've had where there's funny or uplifting stories about auditions that perhaps went wrong, or you didn't quite work out, or went very right that you didn't expect? Any thoughts on those?
I guess a warning, a sort of eternal actor's warning about putting things on your CV that you're not entirely sure about.
Okay.
This is an audiobook audition, actually. I got out of the blue an audition off Mandy to come in and audition to be on a sort of audiobook roster.
Uh-huh.
And I asked sort of what to expect, and they said, we'll tell you when you get there. So I turned up at the studio. I was quite scared, thinking probably going to have to sight read something, but I don't know what it is. Yeah. And so they said, we see from your CV that you can do a Suffolk accent.
Okay.
And I had no idea. I was born in Suffolk, and I suddenly thought, gosh, maybe when I left drama school, I sort of, in a moment of bizarre confidence, put it there.
Right.
But I haven't really thought about it for years. And I thought, I'm not even sure I know what a Suffolk accent is.
Okay. Right.
So, not ideal.
Yes.
So I asked to go to the bathroom, and I was sort of frantically Googling.
Yep. Where did you go there? Dialect site or YouTube or YouTube Suffolk
YouTube.
accent? Help. Yeah, I mean, that's a grand tip as well. You know, if you are stuck, that there is a wealth of information out there. And I think the BBC dialect site is one, although they tend to have a lot of older dialects in there too, which is useful for if you're doing things from different eras, I must say. And yeah, I mean, as far as winging it is concerned, how did you get on? Did you did you get through okay?
I mean, I was terrified. Not everyone works like me, but I'm a person who does like to be quite prepped. But I had no one to blame but myself in this situation. And I gave it a go. And I've been working with them ever since.
Amazing.
Admittedly, they've never asked me to do a role with a Suffolk accent, so I don't know what to make of the whole experience, really, except do try and make sure that if you've put something on your CV, you have a good understanding of it, so lesson learned. But I guess it could have been worse, and apologies to people of Suffolk for what I'm sure was not an entirely accurate representation.
I mean, accents are an amazing thing, and I've got one of the episodes in this season, me and Erica Sanderson are taking apart how on earth you attempt and try and play and find with accents. So if that's something that interests you, hopefully you can tune into that when it's out. But yeah, I mean, that sounds, astoundingly frightening, and there are probably lots of other people nodding who might well have had other similar experiences. But yeah, I mean, also on the flip side of things, say if you've been working hard, and I've heard of people, pinging off 40 to 100 auditions and potentially not getting those. And I mean, we all have to face rejection sometimes, right? So I mean, if I doubt you've been rejected very much, in as much as you're so super amazing.
I have. You
have. Okay, so you failed. I can't believe that at the moment. But yeah, I mean, how would you suggest folks deal with that kind of side of things? What do you do to make yourself feel happier and better when things aren't going right?
I think it's sort of about your whole attitude going into it. I remember reading an interview with an actress who said that after an audition, she would put the sides in the bin.
Right.
These days, I think we maybe don't have paper sides, but maybe metaphorically put the sides in the bin and just try and write it off, because I think it's such a numbers game, auditions, and there can be all sorts of reasons outside your control why you didn't get it.
Yes.
You might just sound strangely vocally similar to someone who's already in it, and you could be absolutely nailing it. So it's great to be able to just mentally write it off. But I think there are always some roles that we just really want, and it can hurt if we don't get it. And that's okay. That's because you're passionate about your job and you really want to work with someone, you really want to do something, and sometimes you're going to feel that. So I think it can help if you really feel worked up about it. Maybe set a little bit of time aside. Maybe you can be cross about this for 10 minutes or sad about it for half an hour, and then just try and get on. Tell someone you're annoyed, and then do something nice or get on to the next thing. I used to try and cook something special or something nice after an audition. Maybe bake some brownies or have a bath or go for a walk. Just do something that is refreshing to you.
Yes, good plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or having brownies in the bath.
That sounds good.
Not during the walk, that wouldn't work. But yeah, I think that's
well, you could plot your revenge, but that's probably less healthy.
Oh, that's brilliant advice. And I think that is the thing, isn't it? Self-care is so important for us voice actors who a lot of the time are quite solitary.
Definitely.
So yeah, it is about finding things that give you solace. I agree.
Yes.
So let's flip side that onto the happier side of things. So let's say, you have got the role, you've been cast. It's so exciting. I do jumping up and down still. I know I've only been doing this for 5-6 years, which in the grand scheme of things isn't very long, but I still get hugely excited about some new roles. And what's the first thing that you do when you get invited to play someone new?
What do I do when I get invited to play someone new? It's very exciting. It depends on the project a bit. Again, if it's an existing show that I haven't heard, I think it can be very useful to listen back to some of that show or all of the show. get an idea of the world you're going to be in.
True.
I think reading the script, or as much of the script as you can, is enormously helpful. And that can vary a bit. Sometimes people will give you the script to the entire series, even if you're only involved in one episode. And sometimes you only get your scenes, possibly because the rest is still being written. So what you have to go on does vary quite a bit.
That's so true. Yeah.
It's
like being the detective, isn't it, as to attitude and how that fits in with the grand scheme of everything else. I mean, and when you get that role, is there any specific character work you do yourself? Like, how much deep dive do you go into the character before any other connection with anyone else involved in the project?
Yeah, I think character work is very important. I think you sort of want to find out how that character sounds, and it's all about what makes that process work for you. Sometimes you might be sort of thinking hugely about their backstory. Sometimes the creatives might have given you an enormous backstory with pages to read through, and sometimes you might want to sort of come up with that yourself. I think people have different levels of preparedness that work for them. I know some actors who will sort of hugely think about how the world they're in works, how the economics of it work, what they would be like as teenagers, what they would have been like as kids. But sometimes it can be that a character sort of leaps off the page, and I don't know, you do it all a lot more instinctively. So it's really about what works for you, I think.
Yeah.
And also if you're a bit stuck, if you feel that it isn't leaping off the page, or that you're not quite sure what tools you might use to try and find a way in, like thinking about backstory, like thinking about different things for different people. Is the character a particular accent? There are some great places online you can go to polish up some accents. Like IDEA, the International Dialect of English Archive.
Yes, superb.
Or is your character like a particular, I suppose at drama school we talk about Laban efforts, a sort of rhythm of how the character sounds, the pitch, the speed, or I don't know, there's all sorts of things you can take inspiration from. Sometimes I find I'm sort of thinking of them as an old friend, or sometimes something you're watching, not to sort of take the voice, but to sort of feed it in and see if it helps. Like, what if the character sounds like Joanna Lumley? What if they sound like Kathy Burke? Have you learnt anything from trying that? Has it brought anything different out if you're stuck?
And I love that, like as a kind of an exercise to do things like, I do, if I haven't driven a lot this year because of various reasons that are obvious, but essentially if I have been in the car or even at home doing chores and stuff, I just listen to the radio and try and emulate that voice exactly as it's said, and that's a technique from Meisner, isn't it, that can be played with a lot more. And I think things like choosing your favourite cartoons or things that you've watched lately and just trying to emulate those kind of voices and playing with that, and how those different paces and nuances and inflections sit with your vocal tones, I think is quite a fascinating way of finding some other characters. And there's also Radio Garden. Have you come across that as a source of fun to have a delve into?
I looked it up from your notes. I don't know Radio Garden very well, but it's fantastic. You can go all around the globe and listen to live radio.
Absolutely,
is that right? Which is this fantastic thing. So many fantastic resources we have now. It's so exciting.
This is the thing. So no, if you're doing an Irish accent or you're doing, a specific American accent, you can just, I did that the other day, just honed in on, just had a look around the specific area and find some talking rather than the singing. It's just fascinating as well, just listening to all these different styles across the world, a bit of Israeli radio for a bit, a bit of Moroccan, so I think as a resource there, something like that as well, and just having a listen and a play for inspiration is just there at your fingertips, if you've got internet connection. As well as obviously, the stereotypes of things. So, if you're going sort of for a sergeant major look or a very bustling, busy, nerdy type, there's so many ways into finding character voices. And where it sits as well. How exploratory are you about moving the voice around your vocal wares for different resonance? Do you play with that a lot at all, especially for like audiobooks and things?
I do play with vocal resonance. I suppose this goes back to drama school. You can play with how you place your vocal resonance, whether you sort of place it in your head or your chest or perhaps in your nose, which people often do for sort of the archetypal witch characters. And that can really change how you're using your voice. Because I do audiobooks, which often require quite a lot of different character voices, that can be very useful. I guess my only caveat would be, I think if you are going for a long time with a resonance that isn't natural to you, you just have to be a little bit careful about how your voice fares.
Yes, so true. So true.
If you're working for hours and hours. I recently was doing an audiobook and I made a male character Welsh, which seemed like such a good idea, and then I realised he had pages and pages of dialogue. Lovely. After a while I was like, oh dear, I can keep it up, but what is it doing to me?
Right, yes.
So yeah, careful, steady as you go. But yes,
lots of lubrication.
Yes, exactly.
Resting when you can, yeah. Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? I think that is the thing. It's like challenging yourself, but also being, again, like practicing self-care, because your wares are in your vocal folds flapping gently or not, and looking after all of the facets that make these beautiful sounds that come out of your mouth and nose.
I think it's so important.
Yeah.
I think we're all... I think especially this year, because we're all at home and because audio is something that can keep going, which is so fantastic. But now we're all much more under our own steam, and it can be easy to find that you've sort of booked in 15-hour days where you're recording in the day and then you're doing a podcast at night. And I think we just have to be very careful of that, and look after ourselves and put limits on what we can reasonably do.
No, I agree. And I think that's about setting the limits that work for you again, isn't it? Because like we all have different metabolisms and ways of working and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think if you feel you need a break, you should have probably taken that break half an hour ago. Yeah, I mean, with regards to communicating sort of your decision making then, so you've had that work on the script and so on. How much work have you done with directors or producers pre a table read or any other connection? Have you had any sort of back and forth regards to chats or emails, or is it mostly that you just turn up at the table read and you're ready to go?
I think it really varies project to project. I think it sort of depends on what your relationship is with the team and what your relationship is with the project. If you've sort of been involved from the beginning, how much you know about sort of what's expected. But I think if you're uncertain about things, it's best to ask. Sometimes I have a whole list of questions sort of broken up episode by episode about what things mean, what they want. Sometimes I think you read the script and you try to understand as much as you can and look up anything you don't understand. But there are some things that it's just so much easier to have the creator or the director tell you what is meant, because you're not psychic.
Yes.
And it can be, I think, really helpful because it's a way of getting communication going, which will make things smoother as you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Superb. I mean, and with regards to that, I mean, I've had folks who I've had Zoom calls with in preparation for things where we've just worked out which accent works best. Just because
that's great if you can,
isn't
do
it?
that.
And that's the very, very exciting, because you feel invested in as well then, right? And yeah, to have that time is very precious. So being prepared for that kind of thing and having, you know, as Beth said, a list of questions that really will help you hone and nail that character to be the best it can be is so key. And I think it's important. Yeah, you mentioned things like, you know, the intention, the objectives, the want, and as an actor, you know, in drama school and universities and all the places that you're probably learning acting, wherever that might be, that is often the case, that it's key to know why you're behaving in the way you are. So it's perhaps, you know, not as easy as just turning up and reading a script, which frustrates me when people think it is like that. And I think it's worth the investment and time in making all of those decisions so that your character seems to be more authentic, more real, or even if we're doing the funniest comedy ever, that is still bound by the laws of authenticity at its core. So I think it's worth investing that time. Super. And when you get to these wonderful table reads, these practice sessions, if you like, what kind of preparation have you done there? Have you marked up your script? Do you think that's an important facet of your preparation? What other things do you have done in place by then?
Yes, table reads. I love a table read. I guess there's sort of two kinds of table reads I do. One is when you get to do a whole cast read before you do a show, which does not always happen, and I love it. Yeah. Basically, this is an opportunity for everybody to be reading the script together. Sometimes the directors and writers might use it as an opportunity to tweak things, and it's just so much fun because it gives you a lovely sense of what the end project is going to be like, that you might not get recording it if you're doing it separately or just doing scenes all out of order. Yes. And then sometimes there are table reads for a project where you're not necessarily going to be in it or you haven't yet been cast in it. So the first table read I did for Wooden Overcoats, I didn't know if I was going to end up in it at that stage or not.
What?
Yeah.
You are Wooden Overcoats.
There was sort of this rumour that it had been written for me, but in a way that makes it worse because you think, oh, if I don't do what they expect me to do.
Pressure. Yeah.
Exactly. So there were 2 scripts for that, episode 1 and 4. And yes, I'd marked up the script. I thought about the character. I thought about the voice. I'd read the script as much as I could, and I'd kind of practiced it aloud a lot. I'm definitely a person who likes to be prepared. It makes me feel much more confident and free. Yeah. I do think some people are not like that and are very good at bringing a script to life spontaneously, or they enjoy not knowing what's going to happen. And
yes,
I've seen it done. Some people are brilliant at that, but some people, I don't know, I think sometimes, for the most part, it's your sort of responsibility to know what's going on.
I think that's a respect to the script, isn't it? And the time and effort that's gone on to craft it. And so spending time with it to then hopefully add your layer of hopefully good stuff to the top of it, is important, really. Yeah. Brilliant.
Absolutely. I think sometimes you get these scripts and then it can be a while before you get to the table read. So sort of refamiliarising yourself so that you don't go in there and sort of end up asking, oh, what's happening here? I've completely forgotten, because it's sort of your job to be on top of it. So I mark up my script. I also mark up things like stage directions. I think that just helps visually for me, particularly, maybe in a different colour, because often they're stage directions where they're requiring you to do something like mumble or scream or growl or something. A lot of my Wooden Overcoat scripts have just massive go faster arrows on them, which is sort of about pace. I guess I've kind of developed a shorthand for myself about how I mark up things. So there'll be squiggles that don't make much sense, but they make sense to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I find quite helpful. Sometimes it can be about where to take a breath, which can be really useful if you've sort of worked out, if you have a long chunk, where that needs to be.
Definitely. I mean, I think I do the same now. And also, when I was doing musicals as well a few years ago, I just started to use the shorthand of the melody of where I was meant to be going with that. And I've actually transposed that to my voice acting now. Whereas if there's a specific thing that, I need to go, hello, how are you? I would write that in a kind of line drawing of where the voice is going, just so then it's that too, quick visual thing that I can link to. Oh yes, that's that bit. And also, I'd write in the yes at the beginning of sentences, or the gasps, or the extraneous sounds. And this is what I'm trying to talk to my students about at the moment. Is just, I think the best voice actors automatically add the extraneous sounds, not just to top and tail a sentence, but throughout sentences sometimes, and just bring the piece alive with, as I say, the word authentic again, but more authenticity in their reaction sounds, in their extraneous moments of release of laughter or frightening kind of sounds that just add to the authenticity of the line being delivered. I think it's so key.
Absolutely. I think it's very freeing to do that for me. You can still change how you do it in the moment, but sometimes you'll find a line where a character says something as simple as yes, and it doesn't make much sense if it's just yes, but it makes a lot of sense if it's yes. And for me, if I've just marked that, I kind of know that it's going to make more sense that way.
Yes, true.
Same.
I have long lines of vowels across my pages.
Vowels, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? And any intention, anything changes, any moment where the character perhaps is turning on a pivot or something that, is a change of tone of voice as well is good to just play with and mark. So I circle things for emphasis or underline them for emphasis. If it's a larger pause, I put 2 vertical or slightly diagonal slashes just to make sure that I've got that beat in there. And I write the word beat as well sometimes if I think that is more personifying of the moment I need to leave between sessions. And also the noises. Absolutely. It's quite fun to just write down what sounds and noises that your character might be making. So the sort of the sighs and the fumes and the scoff noises, quite interesting to try and find the vowels and consonants to write what they are.
Definitely.
But that's grand. So you're there with your beautifully coloured in script. And I mean, what other things do you think is a key thing to just be prepped for recording then? So you've done the table read, you're ready for actual doing it. And I suppose there's differences perhaps to doing it by yourself and self-directing to being in a group situation online over remote recording.
Well, I suppose at the start of all this, I was almost always going into studios and occasionally doing remote recording. Mm-hmm. And this year, that's been completely flipped. Yes. So I've had a kind of interesting learning experience with both. Mm. On studio days, I think increasingly, I used to be an extremely paper person because I love writing notes. Yes. But now I have my iPad. So I use an app on that called iAnnotate, which is great. You can highlight your lines, you can write notes, so it's as good as paper. Mm-hmm. And it avoids page turns, so it's very useful in the studio. You get your tablet and you're all good to go. Other than that, I often, especially if it's a very big day of something like an audiobook, I try and drink a lot of water before. Mm-hmm. I think this is very important. Yeah. It's incredibly dehydrating to be speaking for hours. I also don't drink coffee on those mornings, which is tragic because I absolutely love coffee.
Sacrifices,
absolutely. It's not particularly grand for your voice. Again, this varies person to person, but for me, I know that it's a bit dehydrating. And also, especially if I'm doing something like an audiobook, I misspeak more if I've had coffee. Again, I think I'm quite caffeine sensitive. But,
right.
Eating things, making sure you've had a good breakfast and brought loads of snacks with you, because, again, this is a me thing, but I think other people get it a fair bit. I get stomach rumbles.
Yep, mine's doing it now.
Doesn't go. Yeah.
I'm trying to repress it, but no, it's gone 11 o'clock and my tummy's gone, yep, come on.
Have you had breakfast, Sarah?
I had a little something, yes, and a coffee, which is, my bad.
No, but I mean, I think it varies person to person hugely, and I do tend to drink coffee when I'm doing wooden overcoats, but less so with something like an audiobook. Mm-hmm. But yes, eating things. I've got a pretty fast metabolism, and I really struggle to not get stomach rumbles around 11, almost no matter what I eat. So having a supply of things like bananas, green apples, cereal bars. I've still not found the perfect cereal bar. If anyone has,
top
let
tips,
me know.
Please, for Beth.
I'm exploring all of them. But keeping your energy up through the day is a really good idea. And then recording at home remotely. I think we have probably all had so many different experiences of recording this year? I know that, Sarah, you've always done an enormous amount of remote work, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Has it been easy, or have there been some surprises for you too?
Oh, that's a lovely question, and I think I absolutely enjoy myself in my booth of happiness, and I think it's just because I've done the prep, I'm excited to get in here and work and do and hopefully produce something that someone likes and that enjoys, and that's the whole point of it, isn't it, that Mediva here is hopefully useful for people to take away and take what they want from it and hopefully be improved in some way or do best practice from. And I think that the only surprising thing is just it is that freelancer thing, to be honest, of when I need to stop, when I need to do some self-care, when I need to make sure I'm looking after myself, and my kids come home and are thumping up the stairs and that kind of thing, then I must stop recording, and I have to, because they're just too noisy. So there is elements like that in real life that sometimes I've found myself recording at silly o'clock in the morning, which isn't particularly conducive. So your voice, naturally sounds different, especially if you've done a full day of whatever at that time as well. So perhaps sometimes I found, for example, that my recordings are perhaps too quiet, actually, when I've sent them, that they've been that time of night. So it's just things like that I've become more aware of as time's gone by. And how about you with regards to anything crazy? I mean, is anything truly mad happened on a remote recording with anything or in the studio, something?
I think I've been pretty lucky, but I've done quite a lot of remote recordings this year with big casts, some of whom have been using remote recording for the first time. Okay. So there are always things that can go wrong. Yeah. Sometimes the person who you're doing the session with, their computer can drop out. Sometimes your computer can drop out. I think with remote recordings, if you aren't just doing them by yourself, if you're doing them with people, it's great to find out what people are using beforehand if you possibly can, and maybe even have a practice with it. So we're using Clean Feed today, but I have used quite a lot of different platforms, and it's not the most exciting bit, but just making sure that it works on your system. Having a little go of it can save a lot of time. I
agree. If you can, maybe get a pal you can just ping who's a fellow voice actor or someone who has used it and say, can someone just jump on here so I can check my headphones are connecting or my mic is connecting so that I'm ready. I think that's a great top tip, rather than being the one faffing about when you connect. Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice.
I think there's always things you can't anticipate. Sometimes technology, the internet lets us down. Sometimes your neighbours have decided that they're going to drill, or things that you just can't anticipate. Yeah. And I think in lockdown everyone's adapted to that to some extent. But if you can do a trial run, that does help.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, really. I mean, it'd be grand to just think, like, going into the studio for the first time, for example, recording Antigone. I mean, how had you found that voice? I think if we could start with that, and then to the moment of working on that with the folks in the studio and how it was recorded, I think would be really interesting.
Sure. I'd worked with David once before, but didn't know him very well, and worked with Tom and Felix once before. And there was this sort of idea that the part had been written for me, which was fantastic. And after the read-throughs, we went towards making it, and I did get the part, hooray, which was incredibly exciting.
Goodness.
And they said, sort of, do it as you. And Tom and Felix, sort of the same. The parts, I think, were written tailored for the actors, which never happened, so it was so exciting.
Precious, yeah.
But I don't know, I find it quite inhibiting if the character is just me. There are a lot of things about Antigone that are very me, and that's absolutely wonderful, but I just knew that if she sounded exactly like me, I would feel more nervous, more uptight.
That's so interesting. Yes, because it's difficult to play, perhaps. If you're doing it as you need to put that veil of a character of someone rather than just you. I suppose we're always at the core of the characters we do, aren't we?
Yes.
Right? But yeah, I must say I only started using my own voice in something about 3.5 years into working, and someone said, "So Sarah, no, I want that voice. This one. Why do you want this for?" So yeah, I can totally read that. So it's like leaning into just playing with the kind of longer, more playful resonances of Antigone. I feel she's a wonderful voice. It's, the comedy you bring to her is just sublime.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I've seen you folks live as well as listening to you, and I think that must be nerve-wracking too, doing that in front of an audience rather than in a studio. Is there a different preparation for that kind of style with an audience there?
To some extent, and as Antigone is more sibilant and more breathy than me, I kind of something about her energy and the idea that she has spent so much time in the mortuary and not needed to sort of contend with the outside world too much, suggested that she might sound like that. I suppose one of the things about doing a voice that is so much on breath is that it doesn't work so well projected.
Right.
It wouldn't work terribly well in a stage play. And I remember we once did a Wooden Overcoats read-through outside, and I sort of thought, this isn't going to work. You just won't be able to hear my very on-breath voice. So for live, obviously we're mic'd. There is an element of projection that's a little bit different. I've absolutely loved doing the live shows, which we've been lucky enough to do from the very beginning. We used to do them very much to sort of desperately raise funds. And now it's just become part of the sort of joy of it.
Oh, and that's so good. I mean, all of you, just the chemistry you've got and just the fun of it. It's just, you can't. Also, you can't buy it. You can get a ticket, but it's
you can. Hopefully, you will be able to again.
And I hope I hope you will do. I know this newest season is kind of at some point going to rear and impress. But
I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
Wait.
I think if you get a chance to go and see everyone live, do it. It's the best feeling ever. And also, you'll be surrounded by other people who absolutely adore the show too. And it's great to speak to them and make some new buddies in the audio fiction listening world too. But yeah,
I've absolutely loved doing them live. It's fun bringing a visual element to something that hasn't had that before. So we've played over the years with how we've dressed and whether there are sort of visual gags we can put in.
Oh, the sunglasses, that was glorious.
The sunglasses! I came up with that, actually. I was delighted. I remember I just went to Camden and got these sunglasses.
Yes, because you had your directing hat on for a lot of those too, didn't you? And that must have been fascinating, working with the others and just honing the performance of that too.
Well, I sort of coordinate the live shows, which is mainly admin and so on. It's fantastic to do because I love to get them made. But lately we've brought in directors to direct them. I think because I'm in it myself, it's hugely advantageous to have someone else's eyes on it. We've had people like Ben Partridge and Gemma Arrowsmith a couple of times, who's absolutely brilliant and has so much experience of comedy, live comedy, audio comedy. She's just great. Andy and John obviously are fantastic as well. They're always doing the audio side of it, so it's just nice to have a pair of eyes on it, on the visual side of it, on how it gets across to the audience.
No, that's brilliant.
And it gives us a way of sort of looking at the scripts anew, because some of them we've been performing for years now, which I love, but you want to make sure it stays fresh.
For sure, like you're saying it for the first time, as they say. And that's brilliant. And to say Gemma Arrowsmith, you must listen to her Radio 4 show if you're a fan of comedy in any way, shape or form. It's superb. Go and hunt it down. And obviously Ben Partridge.
Yeah, Gemma Arrowsmith's Emergency Broadcast.
Yes,
is
thank
fantastic.
you for the title and the Beef and Dairy Network of Mr. Partridge. It's just absolutely chef's kiss, isn't it, in comedy? You've been on that too, haven't you? I think.
I have, yeah. I'm in one episode doing a monologue about a cow's eye. That was brilliant. I absolutely love doing that. The show is wonderful. Yeah. And it was a real treat to be on it.
Brilliant. And that's the thing, isn't it? That these shows you're in hopefully lead to more and more exciting opportunities. And I mean, I guess the only other thing to just round off is with your after care of your work. So say you've done your remote recording on your own, for example, editing that and getting that to producers. What kind of processes do you do, and how do you organise yourself to get all that done?
If I can, I try and do anything I need to do as soon as possible. Maybe sort of stay stay put and just get it done. I've always been quite bad at going back to my work after a gap. I sort of hate seeing things that you could change. So I think in a way it can be great to just sort of get on it. There, that is. Yeah, exactly. But also while it's fresh in your mind, because sometimes if you come back to something after a while, it can be very confusing which takes you liked and things like that.
True.
I suppose I've been quite lucky that I haven't done that much work where I've needed to do a huge amount of editing, mainly just sort of chopping to the correct takes.
Yes.
And transferring them. So I don't have tip-top editing skills at the moment.
Sure. I mean, with regards to that, how many takes do you tend to do and then chop down to? Is it, because I know how many are you more often than not asked to do? Is it sort of 3 of the same line in a row, or do you do the whole script through once and then another? What's your sort of go-to method of working if you're doing remote?
That's a good question. So if it's remote, as in you've got somebody at the other end or even the whole cast at the other end, I find people tend to do 2 or 3 takes. It's pretty unusual to get more. Yeah, I think that's the case on Overcoats and most things I've worked on. And at the BBC, it's often 1 or 2. Time is of the essence, so you're going quite quickly. When I'm doing it on my own, I think probably 3 takes is a good bet as well. It depends if it's a final product and you kind of know what you're doing voice-wise. If you're doing an audition and you're playing with things, you might do a few more. But I think it's quite good to limit yourself. Yeah. And if you've done quite a lot of prep, I think I used to sometimes use the takes to experiment and do my homework, try loads of different things. But I think if you've made decisions before, you probably only need a few takes. Yeah. Provided everything goes well, of course.
Yes, tech is behaving itself and the world outside isn't being too noisy. Yeah, no, that's really, really grand. And I think, I've done the same mostly. Mostly, I think at the moment, it's folks are asking for 2 takes and 1 wild, so I can have a bit more fun with that third one, which I obviously lean into being a caricature actor that I am. But yeah, I think most of the time, I mean, I will sometimes do 4 or 5 takes and choose the top 3, and then obviously you want to put your best one first, especially if it's for your audition. Make sure your best take, and no matter where it happens when you record it, make sure that you're putting the best stuff. So in case the producer's listening to 500 auditions and they listening to the first 10 seconds of yours, and it's one when you're just not quite warmed up properly or in it yet, perhaps shouldn't be the first thing they hear. So really think about what the first thing that producer hears is going to be too. I think is a key thing to take into account. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Beth. I mean, is there any parting shots you would like to leave for any budding voice actor right now who wants to be as amazing as you on the scene? What's your favourite things to impart right now that will inspire them to just get going and do it?
I think...
No pressure.
I don't know.
The best advice you've ever given.
The best advice ever. I think it's a great time to be a voice actor. There's so much going on out there in the world of audio podcast fiction, so much that you can check out, that whatever your passions and interests are, there's a project that you can listen to that will inspire you. And if there happens to not be, you should make it.
Great.
I think there is a world of people who are keen to share their experiences and lots of online resources. Even talking to Sarah, I've learnt a whole load of things that I didn't know that are on offer, which is incredibly exciting. So look after yourself, find the things that you love to do, is basically where I'm coming from, I guess. And also, this has been a very, very difficult year. So really be kind to yourself. I think as an actor, I have sometimes struggled to know the limits of what I can do, and we all want to do as much as we can because everything's so exciting. But looking after yourself is also very important. So be kind, practice self-care, remember the things that you enjoy that are chilled things as well as work things.
Yes, I think that's beautiful advice and top-notch advice, frankly. And I love the message as well of if that thing isn't there that you can be involved in an embroiling, make it yourself. That's what I'm doing.
That's fantastic.
I'm having a lovely time. So
I have this theory that Sarah has a time machine because of the amount of things she gets done. It's just incredible.
People have questioned it. I think it's just, I don't know, a mixture of good chocolate and a nice cuddle at the end of the day helps. But yeah, no, that is superb. Well, thank you for your amazing advice. Where on earth can people hear you? Like, what's your most recent and amazing projects you'd love people to jump in on and share and sing praises for?
So I guess the most recent thing I've done is the New Year special for Unseen. It's written by Sarah Shackett and it also stars Felix Trench. The whole series is fantastic. It's beautifully written. There's a whole load of fantastic voice actors. So it'd be great if you could check that out. And then I've got a couple of projects coming up. Life with Leo by Octavia Bray, which isn't out yet, but will be fantastic. And a Patreon project for Rusty Quill called Inexplicables. So look out for that. Yeah.
Yes, I saw a recent announcement for that. That's glorious. So there's so much fun to be had, isn't there, in this world of voice acting? And I think you, as I say, you are a beacon of inspiration. And I also hope that you can get back into the theatre at some point this year too, because I know with Snatchback, your productions you were doing and all the things you were doing at the Vaults and so on were astoundingly good. So here's to things getting back so folks can have the theatrical fun too. But in the meantime...
Yes, fingers crossed.
yes, jump into audio fiction and just have the best fun you can. I think that's the thing. I think I feel solace in my world because this makes me happy, bringing characters to life, and obviously talking to amazing folks like you, Beth, is just my soul food. And I hope that it's helping other people too to up their game in some respects. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, and happy creating, happy making, happy voicing. Keep at it. It's amazing.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been really fun.
Crazy. Have fun. Bye-bye. Bye. Hooray! Hooray! Thank you, you absolute legend. I think it's some amazingly beautiful advice in there, and I think the key ones about self-care as well. So key, because you can get caught up in everything, can't you? And things start to get neglected. So thank you for sharing that.